Hi, hope everyone is doing well. This is your instructor, Kim Verdensky, and I'm going to go over the synthesis process, especially for the approaching natural science formal essay, which is the last formal essay of the semester. One of the major things we've worked on all semester long is using multiple sources to prove a claim or a point. So I'm going to go ahead and preview everything that should have been accomplished by this point, and then walk through the process of how to pre-read a source, evaluate a source, extract information from a source, cite my source in the text, and compose a well-developed paragraph. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just kind of scroll through the content of our course, reminding everyone to please always make sure you read your updates and look for the upcoming events in your calendar as well. And so we're currently working on the natural science unit. So going into our course content, I'm going to scroll down and look at our natural science unit as a whole. So natural science reading 1 dealt with the reading of The Fish, and that was a poem about a woman or a speaker of a poem catching a fish and then releasing it. And we were supposed to have discussed the theme of said text. Back into the unit, we then followed up with additional exercises of the essay guidelines. Remember, we're focusing on a 4-paragraph essay. The first paragraph introduces the issue. The second paragraph elaborates on what is most problematic about the issue. The third paragraph addresses something that is positively being done to help remedy the issue or alleviate the impacts of the issues. And then the final paragraph, your 4th paragraph, the conclusion, is the call to action of like what needs to happen now and what level of urgency does this need to happen. Please be sure in discussing the solutions of the 3rd paragraph and in the call to action of the final paragraph that we really still focus on the science issues and don't fall into social behaviors such as, using recycling bins. That's a social behavior, something people must do. Obviously, people are also going to implement the science practices, but it's a different approach. There's a resource here on quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing. And that's really what we're going to elaborate on today. So if you haven't watched this video on quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing, that would be a great thing to do as well. Continuing on through the unit, we had exploring our topics where we identified a topic and provided at least one citation for the topic that we were going to be writing about. Then we went into reading Natural Science 2, and you had 2 options to choose from, either The Spider and the Wasp, which was more of a science-based but yet literary piece, and then the food allergies piece to choose from. We're actually going to work with this food allergy piece this evening, but we'll come back to that in just a couple minutes. So first, I want to just again continue previewing everything that's in the paragraph or in the unit. Such as the pie paragraph, where we have a point, we have information, and we have explanation. And in this process should sound familiar because we've also referred to this as appeal process, where we have our point, we have our evidence, we have our explanation, and then we either link it to an additional source or we link it to our thesis statement and we conclude. So all this information, should be familiar at this point. It's just being restated in a different way. As always, please make sure you're approaching the course through the content and engaging in all of the information that is available for you. The APA in-text citation link is again an additional resource to remind everyone of how to properly develop in-text citations. The natural science essay outline, the objective with the outline is to make sure that we have sufficient evidence. You can download and insert your own information into the outline and then submit it to this Dropbox. The more work you can do on this outline, the better off you are when it comes to developing the actual essay. if we can synthesize our sources in our outline, which means we would have individual points from different sources in our outline, when we go to draft our paragraphs, we're much more organized. We can then also use that outline later on as a potential checklist to make sure that we stayed on point. So investing the time in outlining is very useful. Okay. After the outline, we then of course look forward to our draft, where you are going to have a sample draft here for you. I will post an additional sample for you as well. You're going to submit your draft by the end of this week and respond to a peer. And then of course you have the natural science professional feedback. Remember, the professional feedback requires that you have submitted your essay to one of the tutoring options available, process the tutor's information, and then apply that to your draft revision. The feedback can sometimes take up to 2 days, so please make sure that you provide adequate time to get the feedback and use the feedback. Then the final lesson of this unit is simply submitting the revision, and that should be done 10 days, November 10th. So please make sure that we were planning appropriately to finish this unit. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and scroll back now to this food allergies document. And anytime I'm searching for sources, say that this was going to be my topic for this most recent essay, and I said, you know what, I know a lot of people that are dealing with food allergies, and I want to go ahead and investigate why we're having such an increase of the number of people dealing with allergies. So I know that my instructor mentioned that I have to have at least one peer-reviewed scholarly journal. So what does that mean? That means that your source has been published by professionals within a field for other professionals in a field. And our goal of reading these mature texts is to help us build our fluency so that as we progress into other academic courses, students can be more successful in their biology class, in their psychology class. So reading the mature professional text helps develop those reading skills, those critical analysis skills. So we're going to survey this piece of writing. The title, The Role of Genetics and Environment in the Rise of Childhood Food Allergy. Just from the title, I know that two major subjects are going to be addressed, genetics and environment. I'm not really sure yet which one I want to focus on. So I'm going to skim the text first. I'm looking at the organization of this text, and it starts with a summary, and then it builds into the introduction. Again, I'm just skimming. I'm looking at the paragraphs, how there's a number of citations. The citations that I see are in brackets with numbers. So this isn't APA. It's more of a Chicago style, because Chicago style is what's used for medical fields and more science stuff, where APA is what would be used for psychology and some social sciences. So we started with MLA. We then introduced APA, and that's what we're using for this natural science paper. But simply being aware of the fact that anytime we see a citation like this in a text, it's giving cues that, hey, this information came from someplace else. And we can then scroll down to the end of this article and look at the number of sources that this team of researchers used, right? They have 97 total sources. So you can see how when we're working in a scientific field, they're blending together information from multiple sources. Okay? This text isn't terribly long. It's a little lengthy, but it's including 90 some sources as well as their own independent research. Okay, so now I've verified that it's credible. It is a peer-reviewed scholarly source. I also know that it's a peer-reviewed scholarly source because it has a volume number. Okay, it also has all of the authors listed. With APA, if there's 4 authors, we will list all of them. More than 4 authors, you would use the ETAL process in your in-text citation. But for 4, we're going to list all of them. We'll address that more in depth later on. If I look at who my authors are, They're all associated with psychology organizations, gastroenterology. So they're all medical professionals of some nature. Again, verifying that I'm looking at a credible source from a credible team of people. If I follow on, it says in the summary, food allergy is a growing clinical and public health problem worldwide. The rising incidence is occurring more rapidly than changes to the genome sequence would allow, but it is yet to be determined whether environmental factors might act in interaction with genetic risk. That is to say, are environmental factors more likely to affect those genetically at risk? Family history is a strong risk factor for the development of food allergies, as it co-aggravates with other atopic diseases. And as such, genetic factors do play a role, an important role, in food allergy risk. However, significant interest has now turned the role to epigenetic modifications of the genome as a major mediator of gene-environment interaction. The consideration of the role of epigenetics in food allergy is likely to provide an insight into the etiological and biological disease mechanisms. This paper discusses the current state of knowledge regarding genetic and environmental risk factors of food allergy and considers the potential for furthering our understanding of food allergy etiology by examining the role of epigenetic variation. So based upon this summary, this would kind of be like our abstract in an APA paper. They're giving a snapshot of what is to come. So just from this summary, I have a lot of really good information. My information is summarized by saying that medical professionals have determined that there is a direct link between both genetics and environmental factors in developing allergies in children. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open a Word document. And on my Word document, I'm just going to go ahead and start with a summary statement of what I've read so far. Okay, so medical professionals have discovered a direct link between allergies, genetics, and environmental factors. Now, none of this is my own original information, so I need to cite it. First, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to correct my spelling error, and then I'm going to go back to my article. On the left-hand side of my article, it gives a indication of how this article should be cited. Cite this as. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this citation with a Control-C. I'm going to go back to my Word document. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit Enter, center my text, write the word references. Hit Enter, and rather than just doing a Control-V, I'm going to do a right click so that when I paste, I'm just going to keep the text or I'm going to merge my formatting. In this case, by merging my formatting, it's going to match the text and size that I've already been using. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. Now I have what looks like a pretty good reference entry, but I noticed that it doesn't include the title of the article, so I may have to go back and modify this a little bit to fit APA formatting. However, I now have the author's names readily available. So I'm going to go ahead and enter their names: Tan, Ellis, Safri, and I'm going to use the end sign Allen. Remember, if we have more than 4, we would cite that as an ETL entry. So just to give us a notation of examples for in-text citation. If we have 4 or fewer, we are going to cite all of their last names using the and sign. However, if I have more than 4, I am now only going to cite the first author, do ETAL. So that stands for and all. And so if I have more than 4, it's the first author and then the ETAL. Go ahead and left align this. And go ahead and give us a title. Capitalize all of the major words of my title, and I'm going to center that. Anytime we are writing a piece, we want to make sure that we do develop a title that reflects the tone and purpose of the piece, so that it's giving a snapshot of what's to come. So far I have a statement that says medical professionals have discovered a direct link between allergies, genetics, and environmental factors. Well, I know personally a lot of people that their children have peanut allergies. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to skim this article to see if there's anything that talks specifically about peanuts. Because a lot of the times when we're looking at complex text, some of the material, especially in the case of the science case, might be more than what we need. So I'm going to first skim the text and see if they talk about different types of allergies. So we have mechanisms of EGI mediated food allergies, talks about genetic variations, evidence of a heritable component. Let's go ahead and read a little bit of this one. Family history is a strong risk factor for the development of food allergy, with evidence from twin studies suggesting that genetic variation is important, although not the only factor at play. One twin study of 58 twin pairs found that the concordance rate of peanut allergy among monozygotic twins was significantly higher than that among dizygotic twins. This study estimated the heritability of peanut allergy to be as high as 81.6%. Another twin study in a Chinese population examined sensitization, which is defined as the presence of food-specific antibodies to common food allergens, and found sensitization to peanut and shellfish to be influenced by both genetic and environmental factors. In this study, the concordance rates for sensitization were found to be much higher in MZ twins than those in DZ twins. However, many MZ and DZ twin pairs were still discordant for sensitization to a specific allergen, and any allergen indicating the individual specific environmental factors also play a role in sensitization. The study also estimated heritability of peanut and shellfish sensitization to be 51 and 54%. I'm going to scroll down. Further studies have attempted to quantify the risk inferred by family history for the development of food allergy. In the United Kingdom, a study of 622 families found that a child with a peanut allergic sibling had a 5-fold increased risk of having peanut allergy. Another study in the United Kingdom also showed similar findings, in which peanut allergy frequently is significantly higher in relatives of peanut allergic individuals than in the general population. However, none of these studies has investigated family history as a risk factor for food allergy in the context of a population-based study. And as such, the results might reflect patients at the severe end of the spectrum with less generalizability to the general population. Right, so now I want to think about everything that was just said. One of the things we want to consider when we're developing an argument is the use of the Aristotelian persuasive techniques of ethos, pathos, and logos. So in this case, I have some statistics, and I think it's really important to point out that the case of the twins that were studied, there were 58 twin pairs studied, and it was determined from them that the heritability of a peanut allergy can be as high as 81.6%. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open my Word document back up, and I'm going to again make a summary statement. And a study of, going to downsize my screen so I can kind of look at both because I don't want to misstate. So a study of 58 twin pairs suggested the heritability of peanut allergies can be as high as 81.6%. That's really high. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste my parenthetical citation. And notice neither one of my examples so far has included any direct quotes. So both of them are very short, succinct sentences, concise, but they're not my own ideas. I borrowed them from someplace else. Okay, so even though it's not word for word, it's still not my own idea. And so I'm going to go ahead and again do my spell check. And now I'm going to think about developing my claim and my hook. Okay, so I have some good ideas that there is definitely a genetic connection. And then I have some statistics, I have some numbers, and I'm going to start with a hook. So no one wants to experience a anaphylactic shock. And that is when, your windpipe shuts up and you can't breathe and you might have to be rushed to the hospital just from eating or smelling a peanut. So developing might not be the best word. So investigating why the peanut allergy is on a rise is necessary. Okay, so now I've led in with this visual of somebody possibly choking. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make sure that I'm using the right word. All right. So according to the medical dictionary, aphylaxis. So now they're using another word that's pretty complex. Absence of, meaning protection against disease. That is sufficient. All right, so I've made a claim. I have evaluated my source. I've thought about my claim, and I've started with a hook. Notice how I periodically stop and reread and go through a checking of my language and my spelling. And in the case of the anaphylactic shock, I double check that that was the right word. A lot of the times when we do automatic spell check, it might replace it with a wrong word, such as sock. So I want to go back and I want to check consistently. And then read out loud to myself what I've come up with. So no one wants to experience anaphylactic shock from eating or smelling a peanut. So investigating why the peanut allergy is on a rise is necessary. Medical professionals have discovered a direct link between allergies, genetics, and the environment and environmental factors. So I've said something about it being on the rise, but I don't have support of that. So I've made a claim, and although this is an excellent piece of evidence that comes after it, it might not be the best piece of evidence. So I'm going to go to a general research or a general internet search and see if I can find an additional source that will help me identify how much of an increase has there been for the peanut allergy. So again, we're demonstrating the process of researching and synthesis, where I need multiple sources to support my opinion. And so we always want to have a variety of sources. And I'm going to go ahead and type in rise in peanut allergies, United States. Okay, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports that the prevalence of food allergy in children increased by 50% between 1997 and 2011. Between 1997 and 2008, the prevalence of peanut or tree nut allergy appears to more than tripled. Wow, that's a pretty vivid claim. Right, so I'm going to go ahead to this source and I'm evaluating my source. It's a .org. Okay, so I know that it's an organization that's for a particular cause. In this case, it seems to be the cause of allergy research and education. That's important. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and scroll down a little bit. And 32 million Americans have food allergies, 1 in 10 adults, 1 in 13 children. Each year, in the US, 200,000 people require emergency room medical care. That's pretty substantial. Now we have some additional statistics and facts down here. Let's look at how many people or food allergies on the rise is even better. All right, so between 1997 and 2008, the prevalence of peanut or tree nut allergy appears to have more than tripled in US children. So I'm going to use this tripled in US children and this idea that there are 200,000 emergency room visits, okay? So between 1997 and 2008, and the organization that's reporting this is the Food Allergy Research and Education. So I'm going to go back to my Word document, and after my hook and my claim, I'm going to say according to the Food Allergy Research and Education, nearly 200,000 people, Americans, visit emergency services. I don't need to capitalize that. Visit emergency services every year. Additionally, FARE reports that the increase in peanut or tree nut allergies has nearly tripled since or between, I'm going to go back to my piece of evidence, between 1997 and 2008. I need an in-text citation. Because I mentioned the organization, I don't need to include an author or a title in my in-text citation. I just need the year. So I'm going to come back to my source, and I'm looking at the top of the page of my source, and I don't see any publication date. I don't see an author. So I'm going to keep scrolling and reviewing this source. And down on the bottom, I have a year of copyright as 2020. So I'm going to go ahead back to my Word document. And I'm going to go ahead and put my 2020 in there. So now I have my in-text citation. Notice in this example, I've included the name of the organization in my narration. So again, I'm just using the year at the end of the name of the organization. I'm also going to include a comma because according to is a introductory or a transitional phrase. So according to Food Allergy Research and Education, I don't need the. Nearly 200,000 Americans visit emergency services every year. Additionally, FAIR reports, so again, I've mentioned the organization as the signal. But I'm going to go ahead and restate the year just so that it's clear that all of this is continuing to come from a source. So again, notice how I am summarizing. I'm putting the information in my own words. I'm not just copying and pasting and dropping quotes into my text. This is the synthesis, okay? So no one wants to experience anaphylactic shock from eating or smelling a peanut. So investigating why peanut allergy is on a rise is necessary. According to Food Allergy Research and Education, nearly 200,000 Americans visit emergency services every year. Additionally, FAIR reports that the increase in peanut or tree nut allergies has nearly tripled between 1997 and 2008. I need a period there. Medical professionals have discovered a direct link. So now I need a transition between my two ideas. So I can say, fortunately, medical professionals. Now the medical professionals is my signal phrase in this case, right? By saying medical professionals, it's a cue, a clue that what's to come after that is going to be information from a source. Notice I don't have any authors' names mentioned, and I don't have any year mentioned yet because my in-text citation in this case is going to be at the end. But I don't have my year in there yet, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure I do that and put in 2012. Okay. So fortunately, medical professionals have discovered a direct link between allergies, genetics, and environmental factors. The research will hopefully show, or hopefully lead to, an ability to early detect and possibly deter or treat allergies in future generations. Okay. So that's kind of my call to action. So let's go back to that more complex article one more time. First, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a word count here. So far I have 100 words. So most of our writing responses like the NS1 and NS2 have asked for 150 to 200 words. So far I have 100 words, but I have synthesized in resources 3 times. Okay, so this again is our goal where we're not just making claims and expecting people to believe them. we're supporting it with information. So I'm going to go back to that original medical text, and let's see, which one of my tabs is it? Here we go. And we had scrolled, oops, wrong one. Okay, so we had started here where evidence for heritable component, and we had read about the twins, and we've attempted to quantify the risk. So I'm going to go ahead and move on a little bit. And now it's getting really pretty complex, talking about the different genes that are being impacted. And for our overall purposes, for our assignments, we don't necessarily need this in-depth gene analysis. Now, if you were working on a similar paper for a biology class, yeah, you would need to read this section really closely. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down and evaluate the rest of this article and see if I can find any more generalized information that I might be able to utilize in my paper. Oh, I see the word environmental factors. Let's go ahead and read that section. It says, because the rise in the prevalence of allergic diseases has occurred more rapidly than can be accounted for by population-based changes in genetic sequence, it is most likely due to environmental factors. However, the rising incidence may be primarily occurring to those genetically at risk. The continuous dialogue between the genome and environment is important for the pathogenesis of complex diseases, which exhibit a heritable component but do not follow Mendel's laws. So this statement here was synthesized, summarized from 3 different sources. And so just to highlight an example of how professionals and other sciences and articles do this synthesis process and summarizing. It's one of our goals in reading the complex text is to see how other people write about subjects. Food allergies, like other complex diseases, is presumed to be caused by a combination of subtle genetic and environmental factors. Okay, so G times E reflects how environmental exposures, including lifestyle and diet, interact with genetic predisposition to modify disease risk and or outcome. An interaction is indicated when the simultaneous influence of 2 or more factors of a phenotype is not additive. Thus, the presence of one factor affects the influence associated with a second. For example, the effect of air pollution on allergic sensitization to inhalant and or food allergens appears to be modified by GSTPI1. Additionally, I'm going to skip a little bit. So that's all talking about asthma. Additionally, the influence of the C159T polymorphism on the CD14 gene could depend on the microbial stimulation from the environment, with individuals carrying the TT genotype appearing to have increased protection from eczema with dog exposure. All right, so now this is talking about egg allergy and asthma. It's no longer talking about my peanut topic, but I'm going to jump a little bit to the end of the sentence. So a lot of times if we read the beginning of the paragraph and the end of the paragraph, we might get a good idea of what the middle is talking about. These findings have been adjusted for family history of allergy, and they persisted even in children without risk factors. Environmental factors that have commonly been considered in interaction with genetic risk factors include vitamin D, smoking, air pollution, and microbial exposure. However, other environmental factors for which there is evidence of involvement in allergic diseases have not been considered in interaction with genetics. For example, a recent study has suggested that dietary antioxidants may play a role in the development of allergic sensitization, as increased beta-carotene intake was associated with a reduced risk of allergy sensitization and lowered IgE levels in 5 and 8-year-old children. A Swedish birth cohort study suggested that supplementation with multivitamins during the first year of life may impart a reduced risk of allergic disease in school-age children. because children who started taking multivitamins before or at age 4 years had a decreased risk of sensitization to food allergies. Therefore, it would be useful to consider factors such as diet, food supplement, sun exposure, pet ownership, and exposure to diesel exhaust in relation to genetic risks. That sounds pretty substantial. So I'm going to go ahead back to my Word document. And before I do, I'm going to review this again. It says a Swedish birth cohort study. So that's what I'm going to reference now. I'm going to go ahead and do a Swedish birth study. Showed a direct correlation between sun exposure and early age 4 and under exposure to multivitamins resulted in a decrease in allergy sensitization. And again, my in-text citation is the Tan, Ellis, and Allen, and that was from 2012. All right, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to spell check. Fortunately, medical professionals have discovered a link between allergies, genetic, and environmental factors. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this. And then I'm going to go ahead and insert it up there. A study of 58 twin pairs suggested that the heritability of peanut allergies can be as high as 81.6%. The research will hopefully lead to an ability to early detection, possibly deter or treat allergies in future generations. Additional studies also showed a relationship between other factors that can influence the likeliness of allergies. Go ahead, I'm going to now bring this piece of evidence up. For example, a Swedish birth study showed a direct correlation between sun exposure and early exposure to multivitamins, which resulted in a decrease in allergy sensitization. Notice how I've used this age 4 and under, and I have a comma on either side of it. That's a modifier. I could have had an additional sentence or could have ended my sentence with this portion, but by adding this modifier, it's describing early. How early? Age 4 and under. Okay, but because it's extra information, it's offset by a comma on either side. So that was one of the lessons that was covered in the Grammar Hammer. So hopefully that looks familiar to everyone. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reread my paragraph from the beginning. No one wants to experience anaphylactic shock from eating or smelling a peanut. So investigating why the peanut allergy is on a rise is necessary. According to Food Allergy Research and Education, nearly 200,000 Americans visit emergency services every year. I need to qualify why every year. For allergy-related incidences. So again, rereading my writing before I decide I'm done, or rereading it for clarity, okay? So according to Food Allergy Research and Education, nearly 200,000 Americans visit emergency services every year for allergy-related incidences. Additionally, FARE reports that the increase in peanut or tree nut allergies has nearly tripled between 1997 and 2008. Fortunately, medical professionals have discovered a direct link between allergies, genetics, and environmental factors. A study of 58 twin pairs suggests that heredity of peanut allergies can be as high as 81.6%. The research will hopefully lead to an ability to early detect and possibly deter or treat allergies in future generations. Additional studies have also shown a relationship between other factors that can influence the likeliness. Okay, so now I realize that this sentence doesn't really flow well. So I'm going to get that out of there. And I think that might better serve as my concluding. So a study of 58 twin pairs suggests that the heritability of peanut allergies can be as high as 81.6%. Additional studies also showed a relationship between other factors that can influence the likeliness of allergies. For example, a Swedish birth study showed a direct correlation between sun exposure and early exposure to multivitamins, which resulted in a decrease in allergy sensitization. The research will hopefully, so therefore, now I need a final conclusion. So therefore, further research will hopefully lead to an ability to early detect and possibly deter or treat allergies in future generations. So there will hopefully be a decrease in the number of emergency room visits and fewer deaths. Okay. I've ended now with this really forceful image of emergency visits and death. So I've linked back to my previous examples. I've incorporated a variety of sources. I've cited my sources multiple times. I've used signal phrases. I have 197 words. So this would be an excellent example of a document-based synthesis. If I were to use this for my formal natural science essay, the only thing I would need is really I wouldn't need much of anything except to maybe reword the beginning of this closing sentence to make it into more of a thesis. So if I were to use this as a introduction, therefore further research will hopefully, we could say, therefore, based on the increase of allergies and increase of emergency room visits, further research is needed to address early detection and possibly deter or treat allergies in future generations. So there will hopefully be a decrease in the number of emergency room visits and fewer deaths. Now I have a really comprehensive sentence that could function as a thesis statement that will elaborate into further paragraphs, because I would have a discussion of the increase, a greater discussion of the increase of visits. I might give specific examples of how severe they are. I might bring in discussion of the EpiPen and the rise of the need for the EpiPen. So this example is kind of multi-purpose. It could function as a natural science 1 or a natural science 2 well-developed response, but it's also an example of how you could start or possibly revise for your natural science formal essay. There's one other thing that I'm missing, and that's the complete citation for that second source. So we need to go back and we need to do our citation for our food allergy research and education. So I know I need the name of the organization and the year of publication because APA requires both of those things. Let me go ahead and hit enter because I also know that APA is alphabetical order sources. So I've copied and pasted the name of the organization and I can go ahead and complete my citation now. So F comes before T, so it's the first one listed. And I'm going to go to OWL because OWL is one of those resources that is really easy to use. And if we just type in OWL and APA sources and a web search, and I'm going to go ahead and bring up the general format. I really like OWL because on the left-hand side, it gives you a nice table of contents of being able to go to directly to your sources. All right, so we're looking at an electronic source. And yes, there are, the auto formatters. A lot of the times it doesn't give accurate results, but we can, you can always give it a try. Just please make sure that you go back and verify that it is in fact true, like it's accurate. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll try this auto formatter and we'll paste our URL in there and we'll see what it gives us. Okay, so it's talking about credibility, citations, and find your website. So again, it didn't really give me what I was looking for. So I'm just going to go back and format it using my sources and using the example. I'm scrolling through online scholarly journal, article from an online periodical, an abstract, a news article, a dissertation, all kinds of stuff. I feel like it should be right at the top though, as a web page or piece of online content. There it is. So it says if a source was written by a group or organization, use the name or group of the organization as the author. Additionally, if the author and site name are the same, omit the site name from the citation. So our group name, we already provided. We put our year. So now all we need is the title of the page, the site name, and the URL. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back to my document. And we have the organization. And now we need the title of the page. So we're going to go back to our source. So facts and statistics is the name of this page. So I'll go ahead and put my period here and do facts and statistics, period. And go back to OWL. That's the title of the page. So that's going to get italicized. And then I need the site name. So first, I'll go ahead and I'll italicize this. And then I'm going to go back and my site name is FAIR. So that's easy enough for me to just go back to my document again and type in FAIR. Now the last thing that I need is the URL. I'm going to do a Control-C. I'm going to go one more time back to my document. And now Control-V. Now notice how it jumped that down to its own line. With formatting, you do want to try to trick it and get everything in the hanging indent format if possible. I realize sometimes it's hard, but a lot of the times you can trick it. So my sources are now in alphabetical order. And I'm going to go ahead and leave this example for in-text citation down there, just so that students can utilize it in the future if they'd like. The only other thing I need is I'm going to go ahead and add a space up top for my name, the course, and sometimes it's helpful to add the assignment And this would all be left aligned. And the date as well. Always want to title your stuff. Yes, we're doing APA in-text citation, and this is a little bit of like more of an MLA style, but the NS1 and the NS2 writing assignments only required a paragraph. This is a well-developed paragraph. Still always good to be in the practice of putting your name on your documents. I've included my references that go directly back to my sources. So I have a well-developed synthesized paragraph. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna save this so I don't lose it. I always recommend you save your work frequently. And I'm just gonna title this NS synthesis sample. And I will upload this to the course for you all later. I'm gonna come back into our course just for a final review of your assignments. And so we've already walked through everything that's now expected to be completed for the natural science topic. Remember what I just did an example of would be for the NS2 or the NS1 assignment. If either one of those are still incomplete, please make sure you do them. You can use some of the information that we just drafted in this lesson, but please make sure you still do your own work. Okay? The outline really should be a major objective to make sure that you collect information from multiple sources. I jumped back and forth between multiple sources this evening because this was going to be a short piece. But if I were really developing that, 600 to 800 word essay, I had to first taken notes on both of my sources and then created my outline because obviously I still had 3 more paragraphs to develop. So for something short, it might be feasible to jump back and forth between your sources. But as you start to develop more and more detailed and longer writings, it's really important to practice that note-taking skill. And then the outlining that's really what you should be focusing on right now. I have gone through the note-taking process, how I like the 2-column digital notes because we're doing everything digitally. But find something that works for you. If you haven't submitted this outline, please make that a priority. And then of course we have the sample paper and the peer review, the professional feedback, and then the final essay that is due on the 15th of November. I'm gonna go ahead and come back to our home page of our course and then we'll wrap this up. So as always, please make sure you're checking your course on a regular basis. If you have a little orange dot up here on your little envelope, you might have had an email from me. Check the news page, look at the calendar, make sure you're working through the content. I've included a bunch of really useful links and videos here for you. Take a look at those if you haven't already done so. Okay. Library resources and services. Check them out. There's tutors available for you quite frequently. And of course, that is also where you'll be submitting your draft for tutor feedback. So that pretty much covers everything. Thank you for participating and following along in the video this evening. I hope you find it helpful and I look forward to reading all of your drafts and essays. I'll see you all again soon. Take care.